own attitude towards the possibilities of peace, towards the Soviet Union, towards the course of the Cold War.
Our muscle. It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me.
You see it on the bridge. Wait, how they get it? If the government had to change the screw in the bridge, they had to shut it down. They got state troopers out there. They got lanes closed. They got their strange machines. How did they get up there?
Peace and blessings, good people. You know what day it is. Shout out to my poets, writers, content creators. Glory, praise, and honor to the Most High. Get comfortable. Grab you something to drink. Give a warm welcome to the woman of the hour, Sydney Linguist. Hold on a minute. There it is.
Right? As I took a bite of something. 1 second. Alright. I'm good. My bad. So, as you can see from the title, my name is Sydney Linguist, and as you can see by the title, we're going to be talking about the whales' declining population, specifically gray whales, although there are other ones that are being threatened right now. But first, I actually want to address something else that's happening right now. And I really wanted to bring attention to it because of how many people it's going to affect. And it's also related to a previous stream when I talked about hurricanes and was talking about the formation of this one that I wanted to talk about. So right now, shout out to China. They're experiencing a really strong, it was a hurricane. It did tone it down, but they're still getting a tremendous amount of precipitation because of the location. So praying for anyone who is there or who has family there. It's Hurricane Dolphin, ironically, because it's a whale. Dolphins are a type of whale. Anyway, thousands of people have been evacuated from the areas around Beijing because there's a tremendous risk of flooding and landslides. The remnants of the hurricane are still bringing torrential rain to northern and central China. This is the strongest typhoon to hit the country this year, and at least it did weaken before it hit the ground, or before it hit land, but it's still drawing a lot of moisture from inland, and that's causing it to rain extremely heavily on central and northern parts of China. They warned yesterday that the Chinese capital of Beijing could receive more than 150 millimeters of rain in 24 hours, which, and in some areas, it could even be as much as 200 millimeters, which is a third of Beijing's annual rainfall. That's a lot of rain. You're getting 4 months of rain in a single day. They also are expecting heavy rain, the heaviest rain on Thursday, and they're expecting 24-hour totals of 350 millimeters in certain areas. They've also broken rainfall records so far in other parts of China. I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation, and I apologize. Wugang or Wugang in Henan received 209 millimeters, and then an area neighboring Hubei got 169 millimeters, both of which were August records. for rainfall. So they are dealing with a tremendous amount of rain, a extreme risk for flooding. So I absolutely pray for everyone going through that situation right now, and I hope all the people being evacuated don't lose their homes. Yeah, this is going to be a really significant event for this area of the country. But yeah, moving on to Wales. The main story I want to discuss, but I will be giving background around this as well. Because right now, scientists are extremely worried because Pacific gray whales are having a severe die-off as climate change and other like overfishing and stuff like that affect their food supply. They had in 2019 a population of about 20,000. It has since, as of this year, dropped down to fewer than 13,000. And it seems like their deaths are accelerating. In the 70s, they came close to extinction because of a number of factors, but whaling was one of the reasons. There were some other issues too. But they rebounded because there was significant conservation efforts to save the whale. If anyone was alive in that time period, they probably would remember that campaign. And as of 1994, they were delisted as an endangered species. However, now they're dying off. Between 2025 and 2026, they estimate that between 2,500 to 8,000 whales are estimated to have died in this time period, which they're calling a catastrophic mortality event. It's really hard to tell how many have actually died because most of the time, especially when they die out to sea, they sink. They basically, when a whale dies, it's a pretty cool experience if you get to see it. But when a whale dies, it will, in the right conditions, it will float there or land on land. It'll get onto land, and they have a lot of gases in their stomachs, and they will actually explode. It is not something you want to be near when it happens, but it does actually happen. That sometimes when they're decomposing, they will actually explode. But they've had strandings where whales are washing up on shore. Because when they die in the water, they sink. They sink to the bottom of the ocean. But when they are close to land, or if they're still floating and approach land, then they can end up on the beaches. And sometimes they land on the beach still alive, but then pass away on the beach. So between 2006 and 2023, whale strandings are the average number of gray whale strandings was 43. But in 2025, it's now 179, which is crazy. And just in the first half of this year alone, we've already seen 146 whale carcasses. So there is a significant amount of whales that are being affected by this event. They also estimated that the ratio between unobserved whales and unobserved mortalities and observed mortalities, which is ones that the scientists actually document, is between 7 to 1 or 25 to 1. So for every one that they see, there's between 7 and 25 deaths that we are not seeing, which is also crazy. The whales that do wash up alive or dead on shore that scientists are able to kind of examine wash up on shore starving. A lot of them are extremely skinny, underweight. They don't have a lot of fat on their bodies, which is supremely important for whales. Whales have a thick layer of blubber, especially because many of these whales travel up to regions with significantly colder water. Just in Monterey, the average temperature of the water was between 52 degrees and 58 degrees. So these whales that are traveling between the tropics and the far north are exposed to quite cold water. So they have a very, very thick layer of what's called blubber. The fat can be like really thick. I think on blue whales, it's over a foot thick. But it's all fat that, number one, helps them maintain their body temperature and to keep them warm. And then secondarily, it helps them float. Fat helps an animal stay afloat in the water. So right now, the scientific consensus is that these whales are starving because they don't have access to adequate food sources because of climate change. It could also be affected by human activities as we overfish the ocean and take out significantly more fish than we deserve and should have, and it doesn't leave enough for living. Or I'm sorry, I'm hearing my child, so I'm getting distracted. So they don't have enough food, and they're competing with each other for enough sustenance. Give me 1 second. Mick, can you come get Everest? He's messing with a baby. Okay. Whales are currently being affected by
Get out of the room.
by food changes, by temperature changes, and an increase in shipping. These large ships are fast enough that whales can't outrun them. And so sometimes they'll get hit by these huge ships, and it'll cause significant damage to their bodies, and obviously that causes them to pass away. So there's other factors that are affecting their deaths, but the biggest ones are starvation and boat strikes and the changes to temperature. One additional one, which I won't go super deep into because I could go on a whole other tangent, but they do also accidentally consume plastic, especially baleen whales, but it's not exclusive to either type. They both have experiences. The scientists have experienced both of them with stomachs filled with plastic. Some animals mistake plastic for jellyfish. Some of them, which I'll explain in a little bit, they open their mouths and swim through the water to feed. And so they're also able to capture plastic in their stomachs. Some of them eat jellyfish in the bag. Oh, I just said that. But yeah, so they also, and then they can also be caught in like fishing lines and other pieces of trash that end up causing them to get either sink or just like get strangled. So yeah, there's a lot of ways that our human activities are impacting them. There's also another theory that because they have to vocalize louder, because the ocean has gotten louder due to all of the stuff that we're doing in the ocean with like drilling and testing of weapons and you name it. The ocean's a super loud place. They are because they're vocalizing louder, they're having to use more of their energy to using more of their energy on vocalization, and so they're not able to use it to get away from predators or chase food or just overall survive the changes in temperature. So they so that's another theory, but that has not been proven yet. Let me grab my baby. My kids woke him up. Nick, can you help him wet himself? Okay. All right. So before I kind of get more into the stuff about the whales dying off and more numbers and stuff like that, I wanted to kind of go back and talk about where whales came from, how they are in the environment, and why it's so important to care about them. So whales are creatures that have existed for about 50 million years, or at least their prehistoric relatives started around that period. They were four-legged land mammals, so they actually were unique in that they started as land mammals and then moved into the ocean, but then they went back into the ocean. We all know the story with fish, but these guys actually did it in reverse. They started coming off the land and moving into the ocean because at that time there was abundant fish, and at the time land predators were very large in certain circumstances, and there was a lot of predators. So they moved into the water because there were less large predators and more food. And then over millions of years, their natural selection, which is the process in which your genes pick favored traits to help you better survive or help your ancestors, descendants survive, because basically the ones that didn't have favorable traits would die off, and so the only ones that would mate successfully were the ones that had favorable traits. So they moved in the water to and so being in the water caused them to develop traits that made them better swimmers, and over those many years they eventually turned into land animals. They ended up turning into fully aquatic animals after being land animals. Some of the ways that they changed to improve their swimming, their legs ended up turning into flippers instead. If you have my whale skeleton, if you can see, their fins are actually more like hands. They do have a skeleton very similar to a lot of other animals that we would see. One of the cool things is this particular stuffed animal has a representation of their vestigial hip bones. Because these used to be land creatures, they did lose their legs over time, but they still kept the hip bones. And so on whale skeletons, you can actually find the little bones hanging below their skeleton towards the back, and that is the remnants of their back legs. They ended up. They also had their nose moved to the top of their head. That's basically what blowholes are, and it made it so it was easier to breathe. All they would have to do is come up and then go back down. They don't have to like stick their head out of the water, and you know how we are. So that's why they ended up with breathing holes on the top of their head instead of in the front of their face, like most other types of mammals. And yeah, as I just said, whales are mammals. They are not fish. They're not like sharks. They are mammals just like us. Breathe air. They have babies. They have internal skeletons. They're a lot of people think they're fish, sadly. Um, so there are two classes of whales. There's baleen. There's baleen whales, which are called mysticetes, and then there's toothed whales called odontocetes. Um, Mysticetes, or the baleen whales, use keratin plates to filter small food out of the water. They're basically like, I don't know if you've ever seen a whale's mouth, but they have like a toothbrush material kind of in the front. And then if you see the plate individual plates, it's like there's fuzzy fibrous hairs all up the side, and then the back part is just a plate, and then all together it makes like a screen basically in their mouth. And so when they open their mouth, they swim through the water, they close their mouth, and then they push the water. Or this is for baleen whales. The baleen whales will push the water through this keratin, and it'll get stuck on all the little fibers. And once they get all the water out of their mouth, then they it's like through their teeth. They then are able to lick the baleen off lick the plankton off the back of their teeth, and then, or baleen, and then eat it that way. Very, very unique that they do that. Odontocetes are the toothed whales. Those are the ones that eat fish, squid, seals, stuff like that. Baleen whales that most of us would recognize, there's gray whales, humpbacks, blue whales, fin whales, and then there's also toothed whales like dolphins, killer whales, sperm whales, belugas, narwhals. All of those animals will eat large prey. The others will eat small prey. The difference between the two different types, baleen whales have 2 blowholes, and a toothed whale only has 1. And it's blue. I mean, their blowholes are really interesting. I used to work in an aquarium, and they had dolphins there. And you can actually see, like, there's the hole, and then they have a flap. And so they open it and breathe and then close it. It's pretty cool. And then the other ones, the baleen whales, theirs are kind of like teardrop shaped, but they're pretty big. I think maybe like that's 1 nostril on a whale. So yeah. I already explained how baleen whales eat sifting from the water. Toothed whales basically use their teeth only to grab or hold prey, and then they swallow the food whole or in big pieces. They cannot chew. And then with communication, baleen whales do not use echolocation. Only toothed whales use echolocation. And I don't think all toothed whales use echolocation. I think there's a few that don't. But they don't use echolocation, which is the process of sending sound out in front of yourself, or just sending sound out and having it bounce back. And it gives you a picture of the things around you based on how it sounds when it bounces back. The whales' frequencies are quite incredible. Baleen whales have a range of 10 hertz to 8,000 hertz, and they make sounds that sound like deep moans, pulses, complex. They actually make like complex songs with the sounds that they make. And and this is the sounds that they're creating. Toothed whales, for them, they can do 5,000 hertz to 150,000 hertz. They make rapid clicking sounds and whistles that they use for navigation and hunting. The blue whale can reach 155 to 188 decibels, which is among the loudest low-frequency animal sound. Sperm whales can reach up to 230 decibels with their echolocation clicks, making them the loudest animals on Earth. Just to give you a comparison, a typical human can hear between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz, and the volume level they can hear between 0 decibels and 130 decibels. So we would not be able to hear most whales without without special hearing things to pick it up. And that is what helps them navigate their surroundings. And one of the contributions to, or potential contributions to their the impacts that they're having, because when you have to use echolocation to travel, there can be it takes energy, and if you're using more energy to travel to maintain your body temperature because of all the changes in the ocean, you're going to have less energy to communicate, and communicating might wear you out faster. And also, as I said, the loudness of the ocean is affecting their ability to communicate with each other. There's some suspicion that change their ability to all the ocean noise is contributing to them beaching themselves. Beaching events can sometimes include hundreds of individuals. Not as common at that size, but definitely the smaller sized whales can die in large numbers. Big whales can still show up in decent numbers for their size, but it's not as common for there to be like hundreds of them. That would be really difficult. So a big reason why there's a bunch of reasons why we want to care about whales. They are considered a keystone species because their benefits and their purpose and their the things that they do for us are way outsized compared to the number of whales that exist. The whale, May, you can bring them to me. They have scientists have described what's called the whale pump, and this has a huge effect on ocean fertilization. There's two types of plankton. There's phytoplankton and there's zooplankton. Zooplankton are the animal version of microscopic animals or microscopic creatures, and the phytoplankton is the plant version of microscopic life. And the phytoplankton eat the phytoplankton are eaten by the animal type plankton, and the the zooplankton, there we go, and the krill are what the whales eat. So if you have a substantial die-off of microscopic plants, you're going to have a decrease in your microscopic animals, and then all the creatures that feed off of that plankton, which include both the whales themselves and the prey that the toothed whales are eating. A lot of these fish and squid, or not squid so much, but a lot of the fish that the marine mammals rely on are also plankton feeders in many cases. So the whale is very, very integrated into the health of the system and the various habitats that exist. The fact that they interact so heavily with the base of the food chain makes them incredibly important for all the creatures that live in the ocean. Another thing that they do is they help with nutrient recycling. Whales feed at extremely deep locations and return to the surface just to breathe. They spend most of their time in deep water. There's only certain species that really come closer to land. The waste that they produce creates a really rich source of iron, nitrogen, and phosphorus, which are all very, very important for the animals in the ocean, as well as the plants that are living in the ocean and the algae. Some of these materials are literally building blocks of life. So they are able to contribute back to the system with their waste to create a richer environment for the things living in it. They also, by moving up and down through the water column as they swim, they physically mix the ocean as well, which helps to spread the essential nutrients to both the depths and the surface, which again is very important because there's some creatures and plant-ish life that live deep, deep in the ocean. And then there's also species at the surface that also rely on phytoplankton. And there's a process called marine snow in the ocean where organic particulates basically sink down to the depths, which includes the waste from animals, from whales, and possibly like stuff that they don't end up eating. The marine snow is basically the base of the food chain in the depths, in the deepest parts of the ocean. Most of these animals rely on this marine snow as a source of nutrients. And so if all the whales disappeared, that would be a significant decrease of the type of the materials needed to feed all of these different creatures. So they'd have a tremendous impact on the deep ocean if they just disappeared. They also help with oxygen. We also have to protect like phytoplanktons and stuff like that because they produce the oxygen for our atmosphere. They produce about half the oxygen for Earth. And then they also trap massive amounts of carbon dioxide. When whales eat this plankton, they end up storing all of this carbon inside their bodies over the course of their lives. And some whales can live for a very long time. They actually found a sperm whale fairly recently. I think it was like maybe within the last 2 decades. I just don't remember when exactly it was. But yeah, they found a sperm whale that still had a wooden harpoon from like the 1850s or something in it. It was like 150 years old or something like that. But yeah, there's some whales that can live a very, very long time. Fun fact, there's also a shark that can live like 400 years. But they hold in all of this carbon, and then when they die, especially the ones that are out in the ocean, they'll sink into the depths. They'll sink all the way down to the bottom of the ocean, and that locks the carbon away. And it can keep it locked away for centuries. So they help with carbon reduction through the way that they eat. They also, as I said, by boosting the health of the plankton, they're also supporting the other fish and ocean predators. Additionally, their bodies are hugely important to creatures on the ocean floor. When they, obviously, they're giant animals, and so their carcasses can last generations. It can last decades. When they fall to the bottom, there's hundreds of different deep sea species that include worms, crabs, bacteria, and all of these creatures need those whales to live. Like, I watched a documentary that included a discussion about them, and one of the things that it said was some of these have specialized exclusively or to feed exclusively off of whale carcasses, and it's so much of it's such a diverse and specialized community that there's creatures that can consume every single part of the body. There's some that eat the bones, there's some that eat the flesh. There's so many different creatures that exist. My personal favorite are hagfish. I think they're super cool. They're worm-like looking. I think they're actually eels. But their call to fame is that they produce slime extremely quickly, and so their body is covered by this really thick slime. That way, if an animal bites them, they basically just fill their mouth with this slime, and they produce it so fast that if you try and pick one up, you can literally just like have handfuls of slime in your hands just from what they're producing when you're touching them. I've held hagfish before. It's quite interesting. A lot of people would probably find it gross though, but I think it's pretty cool. But yeah, a lot of different creatures feed on these whales and help every community in the ocean, the deep sea, the shallow waters, and then all of the fish that are traveling through the ocean ecosystems. Especially since a lot of ocean animals migrate. Gray whales have the longest migration of any species, I believe. They travel around 14,000 miles from the Gulf of Mexico all the way up to Alaska to feed. They basically go up to Alaska to feed, and then they come back down the coast and have their babies in the warmer waters off the coast of California, and then they bring them to Mexico, or like the area around Mexico and the Gulf, to get access to food and stuff like that. And then when the baby's bigger, then they travel back up to where it's cold, because that's where you're gonna find more food. They also are, to me, this is not as important. I don't really care as much about this, but for a lot of people, this would be pretty important. Whales also benefit our own economy. Not only do they help with fisheries and the health of fisheries, but they also boost the economy through ecotourism and whale watching. So having whales around is helpful to us as well in certain ways.
What do you want?
We also, fun fact, used to use dolphins in the military to help locate ordnances or bombs and other types of weapons underneath the ocean. I think they also used it for other things, but I know specifically it was for identifying explosives and stuff like that. So, as I was saying, these animals are dying off extremely quickly. Gray whales are not the only species to be affected by this, but they are one of the ones most extensively being affected by this stuff. Part of the reason, as I said, like ship strikes and stuff like that, but the biggest changes that they believe are contributing is climate change itself. The warming sea is reducing the amount of sea ice, and krill and small fish that whales eat rely on this sea ice for a lot of different reasons. And when you're shrinking the population of basic food sources, you're going to have greater competition for the food that is available. And so you also might see animals killing other animals, particularly Urodontocetes. They might become more aggressive. I don't know this for sure, but I do know that killer whales, or I should say orcas, it's not fair to them to call them killer whales. Orcas are attacking boats. They're killing animals for fun. So there could be some type of thing. And then it also, climate change has been affecting the migration of these animals. The weather has started to change, the climate has started to change, the warming based on seasons is changing, and so they are experiencing stuff that they don't understand. It's disrupting their normal migration and feeding patterns. The weather is affecting them because you'll have severe, just like on land, severe weather also affects the ocean, and it affects the creatures under the ocean to some degree. And the melting ice also can disrupt the normal migration patterns because of changes to canals and all sorts of stuff that the ice can produce. They can also have habitat stress as a result of the changing temperature and water chemistry, because the temperature of the water, as well as all the stuff we put in the ocean, are changing the water's makeup, which also makes it harder for whales to survive and raise their babies. That's a huge component, is being able to raise healthy calves. And if you're stressed for food and experiencing changes to where you travel and how you navigate and how you communicate, you're going to be less likely to raise healthy calves. So it's important for us to consider all of the creatures that live in the ocean, because we rely on them. We cannot separate ourselves from nature because we rely on nature for our existence. I think 80% of the population relies on, or I forgot what the number is, but it's like 80% of the population rely on the ocean as their main source of food. So we are, we're affecting ourselves by affecting the whales. And we also are affecting the entire ecosystem of the ocean by losing these whales. Some people might know, I almost said remember, but no one would be alive. I mean, actually, people might be alive, or people might remember this part, but whaling used to be legal. It was at one time the biggest contributor to whale deaths. They would hunt them extremely extensively. Like if you look up the pictures, it's quite sad. You can just see whale after whale hung up to be processed. And it began as an organized commercial practice in the 11th century. but it expanded globally when they started to use whale oil for lighting, as well as machinery during the Industrial Revolution. They hadn't really discovered petroleum yet, petroleum jelly and the oils and stuff that you can get. So whale oil was quite beneficial and used widely as a source of lamp fuel. And there's also the sale of their bones and stuff for various things. This almost wiped out the whale populations. Certain animals were basically at extinction levels, but in 1986, the International Whaling Commission, which regulates whale management and conservation, helped create a global ban on commercial whaling with some exceptions to allow the populations to recover. Countries like Japan, Norway, and Iceland still do continue to commercially fish or do hunt specifically for a whale. But this is allowed in certain circumstances. Indigenous subsistence, I can't say that word, is still permitted. So indigenous species that live in certain areas that rely on whales as their exclusive food source are able to still hunt whales. I know specifically Greenland is one of those places. There's a woman that I follow on YouTube that actually has shown videos of her preparing whale meat. And she says one kill can last them like the whole year, which I totally believe. So, yeah, we have brought the gray whale species back up to we had since brought the species back from the brink of extinction. Gray whales were one of the ones that was deeply affected by the whaling industry. But once the ban went into effect and the Save the Whale campaigns really picked up, we saw a rebound in the population, and we were able to get up to, I think, let's see. I think it was like 20,000 or more. They did bounce back for a while, but now, as I had talked about at the beginning, we're seeing a rapid decline of these gray whales specifically right now. There are other ones that are significantly at risk. There's one particular whale that it's called a Rizzo's dolphin. Or no, sorry, not the Rizzo's. The vaquita. And I'm gonna look it up right now because the last time I looked, there was 7 individuals left. Now they just say less than 10 right now. They're at this point they're basically extinct unless they do some very successful breeding program. But at that, they're very elusive, they're hard to find, and they're obviously so non-numerous. When I was in high school, I think there were 30 left. So that was almost 10 years, or no, it was a little over 10 years ago. So there's been a continued decline of these whales. But that's for the vaquita. That's not the gray whales. With the gray whales, There are currently efforts underway to step in and protect them. They do a lot of work already. The whale conservation um, goal is still very much in place because of the significant risk most whale species are still facing because of human activity. There's a program, I think it's still called this, the tagging of Pacific predators. There's a bunch of different scientific pursuits out there to track whale populations. Now, with our access to better technology, we're able to tag whales where it's probably not this big. Not size wise, but length wise. There's it has a thing that like gets injected into their skin, which they can't really feel, so it doesn't actually hurt them. You basically like stick it into them, kind of like you would with a needle, and then it has a cylinder tube, which is where all the data is stored, and then on the top there's like a little ball with an antenna, and that's how they're able to track the whale, see where it went, how deep it went, to help collect all that information. And then eventually the tag will fall off, and then they can collect it and get more information off of the tag. And they do this with whales. They do it with sea lions, sharks, lots of different large animals in the ocean. And that gives us a good idea of, number one, numbers, how many there are, where they're traveling. And then they can even compare the data from certain years to other years to see, like, all right, so how are their movements shifting? How are their feeding behavior shifting? How is their going up and down in the water column? How is that changing? Because that can tell you a lot about how the animal is doing in its environment and how well the animal is coping to the changes that are occurring around the world right now. They can also, when they find the whales, they can also take measurements to kind of, I think, if I remember correctly, they can sometimes take a sample of them. Like you have, it's almost like a cookie cutter, but really small. And you basically like stick it into them, and then you can get like a sample of their skin. So you can tell more information about like what they're eating, how their health is doing, and stuff like that. So there is, and then there's also, actually, this one's cool. They study whale noises to try and understand how they communicate, what it means, how it's being affected by noise pollution. There's all sorts of stuff they can do. One of the things they recently did was they decoded humpback language. So they can now understand what humpback whales are saying to each other. And we're able to understand what they're communicating about. They basically differentiated different pitch and tone shifts, and the different oscillations in the calls and sounds that they're making indicate different things about like location of food, talking to each other about predators, all sorts of different communication tactics. So it's really cool because it shows you how intelligent these creatures really are. A lot of people like to assume that humans are the only intelligent creatures on the planet, but dolphins, whales, particularly odontocetes, incredibly smart. Whales and dolphins particularly are some of the smartest animals on the planet. Dolphins are estimated to be as smart as like a 7-year-old, I think. And I honestly would say that they could actually be smarter. We just don't know how to decode their thinking yet, and we don't actually know it. Orca whales, dolphins, some other of the odontocetes, they literally plan out their hunts and stuff and give each other directions on where to go and how to handle it. They're quite cunning. They orca whales in particular, and I think dolphins too, will actually set up traps where they'll have some whales in one location, and then they'll like funnel their prey into a land area, and also they'll push them towards shore and run them up onto the beach, and then they'll just grab them off the beach. I've seen dolphins doing this where they like swim up and scare the fish onto the sand, and then they just like swim up and snatch them and then go back into the water. So yeah, whales are super, super smart. Let me see that age comparison.
Look, Mom, a box. Look, a box.
Let's see. Intelligence.
Raining. It's falling. And then two. On.
A orca has, let's see. Dolphins have the intelligence at around a 2 to 3 year old. Apparently, scientists are suspecting that orcas might be as intelligent as humans. So, as I was saying, I think these animals are a lot smarter than we think they are. We just haven't learned how to identify this type of intelligence, because there are different types of intelligences. So, yeah, these animals are honestly similar to people in general in the ocean, in terms of like their level of intelligence over everything else. So yeah, they're amazing creatures. It would be an absolute tragedy if we lost whales. I don't know if anyone has ever been whale watching, or has had the opportunity to see an actual whale. But it's mesmerizing. These are huge, huge animals. They run the gamut. There's some that are pretty small, but the blue whale, I think its max is like 100 feet long. There's a blue whale skeleton at the aquarium I used to work at, and she was 86 feet long, I think. Blue whales can reach 98 to 100 feet long and weigh up to 200 tons. And just to give you a comparison, a African elephant is how many tons? In tons. I want tons, not pounds. 1.7 tons. So, an elephant is like, it would take 200 elephants to weigh as much as the blue whale. So, I'm not very good at math, so that might be a little bit off. But yeah, there are a lot. It takes a lot of elephants to weigh as much as one blue whale. And blue whales are, in fact, the largest animal that has ever existed. I'm fairly certain there are no prehistoric creatures that are bigger as well. Just while I'm thinking about it too, that's actually why they are so vulnerable, because they're such large creatures. Not only are they entirely dependent on the ocean, because if they do land on the beach, they suffocate because their bodies can't support the weight of their body, and so that it like pushes down on their lungs and organs, and it causes them to stop breathing. Um, Additionally, they require far more nutrients than any other animal. They're eating constantly, and it is. Let me see. I remember this. I don't remember the exact number. A blue whale consumes 500,000 calories every day. Oh no, sorry. Every bite, every mouthful of food is 500,000 calories. So they're consuming at least 4 million calories a day. So they require a substantial amount of food. So they're incredibly vulnerable animals in our ecosystem, despite being that big. And as I said earlier, they are immensely important for the ecosystem. We need it for fish. We need it for plankton. We need it for people. We need it for everything that lives in the ocean and our own selves. And honestly, even some of the land ecosystems probably would suffer if whales disappeared because of the interactions they might have with the ocean, and ocean birds, all that stuff. So it's really, really important for us to care about the creatures that we share the land with, or oceans in this case. So we have to start, one, demanding legislation that protects animals. Just like on land, there are parks in the ocean, essentially. They're called marine protected areas, where people are not allowed to go, and there's more strict boat requirements and all sorts of stuff to keep the animals in those areas safe. So we need to create more marine protected areas for animals to live in. Again, I won't go into it heavily because most of you who watch probably already know from my previous streams, but we also have to stop climate change. We have to start demanding our government take action against these companies that are polluting our world, because they're going to destroy it for the rest of us. And when I say the rest of us, I mean everything living on this planet. Plants, animals, us, you name it, we're all going to suffer from the effects that we're having on this planet. And not just climate change, but the pollution problem, trash, all that stuff we're putting out there, chemicals, pesticides, they're all affecting whales and animals in the ocean. And whales in particular, because they eat so much, they're going to end up being exposed to more chemicals, more plastic, because they have a bigger body to be exposed to all of the different things that we add into the ocean. So, as I said, support marine protected areas, support funding scientists and aquariums, and the many, many programs out there designated to protect the whales. NOAA and the TOPP program, that the tagging of Pacific predators. There's also a website that sells bracelets that when you buy the bracelet, it comes with it tracks the animal for what you bought. That way you can kind of buy your own science experience and you get to track whichever animal. I don't know if they have whales right now, but they do have a lot of other really cool animals. And then, there's so many different scientific programs out there, especially little local ones that may not be like the big ones that everyone knows. And I highly suggest looking up different programs that exist, different ways to support scientists. there's a lot going on in the world, and we really need to start coming back to a scientific minded existence. We have to support the animals around us. We have to support the people that are supporting the animals. Just to throw in, don't go to SeaWorld. But other than that, I hope you learned a lot from this episode. I very much enjoy talking about the ocean and ocean creatures. If you have watched my stuff before, you can probably guess I love natural disasters. I love talking about climate change, sciencey things, but oceans and whales in particular are a soft spot of mine because I grew up wanting to be a marine biologist. It wasn't until college that I switched my major, but up until then, I wanted to work in the ocean with the ocean. I loved sharks and everything, dolphins, whales. And even though it's not my focus right now and my specialty anymore, I still have a super invested interest in studying the ocean, understanding it, and talking about it, encouraging people to love the ocean as much as I do. I do have a master's degree in environmental education, so I do have some experience under my belt as well. So if you guys have any questions or want to explore topics related to this, or branch out on other things that I said, please feel free to comment, let us know. I love talking about topics that other people suggest just as much as I love talking about the stuff I'm interested in. So if there's anything that you'd like to know, I'm happy to make a little presentation on whatever it is you want to hear. And other than that, I just want to thank everyone for watching. Again, I hope you enjoyed watching. You learned something new, and let's try and save those whales. And also, I did not hear about the cop that fell down chasing somebody, but I'm interested, so I will be looking that up. So thank you guys. Have a good Wednesday, and I will see you guys Friday, and next Wednesday will be my next show. So have a good night, guys.
Own attitude towards the possibilities of peace, towards the Soviet Union, towards the course of the Cold War.
Art muscle. It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me.
You see it on the bridge. Wait a minute, how they get it? If the government had to change the screw in the bridge, they had to shut it down. They got state troopers out there. They got lanes closed. They got their strange machines. How did they get up there?